All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our 2020 Member Madness Tournament. We were very excited to have you guys here. As you can see, we kind of changed things up this year compared to last year with everything going on right now. We are obviously not in the office, as I know has affected many of you, but we wanted to still come to you guys and present this tournament. We didn't want to take that off the board. Wanted something really excited for everyone to be cheering for in this weird time. So I'm coming to you live from my home office, but very excited to still do this tournament. The tournament will proceed as normal. For everyone that is who attended last year, it's going to be the exact same format. It's a coin flip. If you're new, basically we have a tournament field full of all of our referred members. And if you did a referral, you may have made this list. We did it for our first 64 members who referred a new member. So there's no true seating, but we just filled you out in this brackets. And we're going to be doing it with a trusty little coin flip with our Kori here. So you'll see a graphic with the two people for each little matchup, and heads will be the top individual and tails will be the bottom. So we're very excited to kind of to move them on. But like I said, this is for a 4-night accommodation stay for our 2020 annual conference in Denver, Colorado. So don't miss that. If you're a part of this tournament and you don't win, we still really would love to have you come to the conference, of course. But yeah, just something really we wanted to put out there for everyone to be excited about. So without further ado, we'll kind of go through the tournament here. Like I said, we have 4 different regions, not necessarily geographically coordinated with where you might be located in your office, but just for to kind of simulate the tournament we're all familiar with. We wanted to simulate that, have some fun with it. Obviously, there is no basketball this year, so hopefully this fills the void in some capacity. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first matchup here. Like I said, the name on top will be heads, the name on bottom will be tails. So without further ado, let's start in the East region. Our first matchup here is Gary versus Gayle. So let's go ahead and get things started. All right, moving on is Gary. All right, next up is James versus Manuel. All right, looks like we have Manuel moving on. Okay, next up is Wendy versus Michelle. All right, we have Michelle moving on to the next round. Next up is Scott versus Tina. And we have Scott moving on to the next round. All right, next up in the East is Jay Jeffrey versus Tracy. And we have Tracy moving on. Our next matchup is Christina versus Ricky. And we have Ricky moving on to the next round. All right, next up is Sam versus Larry. And we have Larry moving on. And the final first round matchup in the East is Seth versus Taylor. And we have Taylor moving on. All right, we're gonna head down to the West bracket. If anyone has just joined us, again, we're doing a heads and tails coin flip to see who moves on the bracket, so everyone has the equal chances. The name on top is heads, the name on bottom is tails. So let's get started with our first matchup here in the West. And we have Samantha moving on. Next up, we have Jeff versus Angel. Flip that one again, almost dropped it. All right, moving on, we have Jeff. All right, next up we have Carol versus Casey. All right, looks like we have Casey moving on. All right, next matchup is Leona versus Danielle. And we have Leona moving on. Next up, we have Taryn versus Jenna. And we have Jenna. Next matchup here in the West is Jennifer versus Michael. And we have Jennifer moving on. Next up is Christina versus Ashton. And we have Christina moving on. Next matchup here is James versus John. And it is James. All right, we're gonna head on over to our next region, which will be the Midwest. Our first matchup there is Danielle versus Cole. Flip that one more time. All right, we have Danielle moving on. Next up, we have Kori versus Richard. And we have Kori. All right, next matchup here in the Midwest is Jody versus Brian. And it's Brian. And next here we have Alex versus Matthew. And Matthew moves on to the next round in the Midwest. All right, next up we have Derek versus Tiffany. And it looks like we have Derek. All right, next up here is Quaid versus Patrick. And it is Quaid. All right, and now into our final two matchups here in the Midwest first round, we have Alicia versus Amber. And we have Alicia moving on. And next we have Jennifer versus Faye. And Faye moves on in the Midwest. All right, let's head on up to our next region, the South. And this will complete our first round. So our first matchup here, we have Heather versus Kate. All right, we have Kate moving on here in the first matchup in the South. Next up is Bernard versus David. Flip that one again. And we have Bernard. All right, we have Aaron versus Benjamin. And Aaron moves on to the next round. Okay, we have Allison versus Mary Jo. And it's Mary Jo. Next up, we have Orlith versus Patricia. And Patricia moves on. Next up is Lauren versus Candy. And Lauren moves on in that matchup. And a couple more here for the South. We have Theodore versus Jordan. And it's Jordan. And for the last matchup here in the South, first round, we have Ernest versus Joshua. And it's Joshua moving on. All right, so that completes our first round here in the tournament. We're gonna move back over to the East to move on for that next round. If anyone just joined us again, we're doing our coin flip here for the Member Madness tournament. The winner gets a 4-night stay accommodation for the 2020 annual conference in Denver, Colorado. For anyone asking why I'm sitting here flipping this coin, we just have an even chances. So we have heads and tails to move on to the individual to move on to the tournament. The top name is heads in the matchup and the bottom name is tails. So it's really a miracle that I haven't dropped this completely yet. I'm sure we have a few of those coming, but I have a backup quarter just in case. So without further ado, let's go ahead and keep moving on with the East. Our next matchup here in the East is Gary versus Manuel. And we have Gary Snyder moving on. And our next matchup in the East is Michelle versus Scott. And we have Michelle moving on. All right, next matchup is Tracy versus Ricky. And we have Ricky winning that one. Okay, next up we have Larry versus Taylor. And we have Taylor Wright moving on in the East. All right, we're gonna head on down to the West here for our matchups. We have Samantha versus Angel. And we have Samantha moving on. All right, and our next matchup is Casey versus Leona. And we have Leona moving on. All right, next up here in the West, we have Jenna versus Jennifer. And we have Jennifer Santino moving on in that one. All right, and the final next matchup we have in the West is Christina versus James. And James takes that matchup. Got some close ones here, guys. Got some really close ones. All right, we're gonna move on over to the Midwest. And our next matchup here in the Midwest is Danielle versus Kori. And Danielle takes that match. All right, we have Brian versus Matthew. And Brian comes out in a close one. Next up, we have Derek versus Quaid. And we have Derek moving on. Okay, and the final matchup in the Midwest for this round is Alicia versus Faye. And we have Faye. It's getting intense in here. Hope you guys are as excited as I am. It's really heating up. I'm more nervous about catching this quarter, so I can feel it if you guys are still in this tournament. If you're still alive, I feel the tension, I feel your anxiety, but we're gonna get there. All right, our next matchup here in the South is Kate versus Bernard. And looks like Bernard is gonna move on. Okay, next up is Aaron versus Mary Jo. All right, Mary Jo wins that matchup. Next up in the South, we have Patricia versus Lauren. And Lauren takes that one. Nail biter. Really close one. Probably one of the most exciting ones we've had so far. Next up, we have Jordan versus Joshua. And Jordan takes that one. All right. Well, that completes our next round of the tournament. So we're going to move back over to where we started in the East. And again, if anyone's just joined us, we are doing the trusty coin flip to see who moves on to win the Member Madness tournament. So without further ado, we're going to go on and take on this next matchup in the East, which is Gary versus Michelle. And Gary takes that one. All right. And the next matchup in the East is Ricky versus Taylor. And Taylor wins that close one. All right, looks like we have Gary versus Taylor for the East Championship. We'll come back to that one. And the West, we have Samantha versus Leona. And Samantha pulls it out, takes the lead there. All right, next up we have Jennifer versus James in the West. And it is Jennifer. Moving on. Okay, we're gonna head on over to the Midwest region here. A couple more semifinals for you. We have Danielle versus Brian. And it's Danielle moving on to the next round. And the next semifinal for the Midwest, we have Derek versus Faye. And Faye closes that one out. All right, let's head on up to the South. We have Bernard versus Mary Jo. And Bernard is moving on to the next round in the South. And who will face Bernard in the next round of the South? We have Lauren versus Jordan. And moving on is Lauren. All right, so that gets us to our regional finals. I know, super exciting. I hope you guys are on the edge of your seat. We hope that you're really feeling the intensity that the tournament that was canceled earlier couldn't fill that void. So we really hope this is bringing it to you guys to kick off the week on a Monday. We know, can't believe it's already April, but we're here. It is the day of the national championship for Member Madness. And we are very excited to move on to the finals. Again, if everyone is joining us for the first time, I see some names popping up there. We're doing our trusty coin flip as we did last year to see who moves on to win the 4-night accommodation for the Denver conference this year, 2020, the IAAO annual conference. We are very excited to do this again. It was a blast to do last year. We had a lot of good feedback from you guys. So we're really excited to bring this back to you again and deliver something, kind of fun and really exciting to do for you guys. especially in this kind of odd time. Like I said, joining you guys from my home office here, but very excited to move on here and finish this thing out. It's been really, really close tournament, really hard fought, well played by everybody. Really proud of everyone who's added those members, but we're going to move on here to our East final, and we have Gary versus Taylor. And winning the East is Gary. This is getting good. This is getting really good. All right, we're gonna move down to the West here. We have Samantha versus Jennifer. And it looks like we have Samantha winning the West. All right, we're gonna move on over here to our trusty Midwest region. The final for the Midwest is Danielle versus Faye. And moving on is Danielle. All right, and next up for the South final, we have Bernard versus Lauren. And we have Bernard moving on. All right, guys, we're getting down to the final matchups here. We have 4 final participants. So we have Gary from the East, we have Samantha from the West, Danielle from the Midwest, and Bernard from the South. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do our final matchups here. So we have Gary versus Samantha. And we have Samantha moving on to the final. All right, and moving on to the other side of the bracket here, we have Bernard versus Danielle for the other side. And it is Bernard moving on to the championship. All right. It's here. It's real. It's as intense. I hope it's been as intense for you guys as it has been for me. Trying to catch this quarter without embarrassing myself has been very stressful, but very exciting. So I hope you guys are having as much fun as I am. We have Samantha and Bernard in the final matchup to see who wins the 4-night accommodation stay for the 2020 annual conference in Denver, Colorado. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and let the same quarter do the trusty coin flip to see who goes on to win. So again, we have Bernard Tyson versus Samantha Soup. Here we go. And the winner is Bernard. Congratulations, Bernard Tyson. We are very, very excited for you to have won the 4-night accommodation stay. We will be reaching out to you with details on that. But I think the important thing here, guys, is we had 64, more than 64. We couldn't include everybody. Refer new members, and we couldn't do this without you guys. These fun activities, the conference, all of our events, all of our success is owed to you, our members. Again, this is an association ran by the members, and we love involving you guys in fun ways like this. So we hope you guys had a lot of fun with this. We hope to do more ideas similar to this little video that we made in the future, but we are very, very excited. So again, thank you so much to Bernard. Congratulations on your win. You did it. You played your heart out. It truly is a Cinderella story. So, but again, we want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Hopefully your name was on there. Hopefully you get excited to see yourself involved in some way. We want to keep encouraging this for you guys, and we'd love to see more of this participation in this idea. So if you guys come up with any fun ideas like this, or have some, cool ways that we can include you guys, again, shoot them to us. We'd love to include them. We'd love to include you guys. But from everyone here at IAAO, we want to thank you for referring the new members, and hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Bye.